The pieces lie where they fell, by Evil Humor. Edited and co-authored by Anon E. Mouse Jr. Read for you by My Name is R. Chapter 46. Rex, Vixley, Windbreaker, Page Turner, The Nightmare, and Nightblade. Part 1. Rex. With his second smoke potion covering their front for a moment, Rex quickly raced over to the rest of the pack, while Knight bounded over the overturned desk to slam his sword into the ether-constructed blade that the Nightmare created, blocking the creature's swing and beginning to force it backwards. Once more, Rex found himself lamenting the fact that he lacked the means to do anything more effective, while the rest of the pack was, "Hey Rex, do you hear that?" Vixley asked him as she crouched behind the desk, and Knight flew past them, with the Nightmare slashing in the air. Rex tilted his head and looked to see a door with a couple of equines standing on the other side. Racing down to the door, he saw the Captain General, a few royal guards, and a tall drone in guard armor that had to be memorizing gaze on the other side. "Rex the Diamond Dog," the Captain General said to him, exuding authority in her voice alone. "Are you five well?" "As well as we can be," Rex said, as Paige flew around Knight, creating a shield for him, only for her to spin to the side as the Nightmare went after her, with waves of ice shards in the air. "What are your plans to defeat that creature?" she inquired, as she examined the doorway with her horn glowing. "We expect to be through within 10 minutes at the very earliest." "While we were fleeing your guards, we traveled to an alternate world where we saw the effects of the elements purify a mare named Sunset Shimmer," Rex replied. "These elements are a set. While 5 were able to produce a rather impressive effect, I am positive that it will take all 6 of them to defeat the Nightmare, which means we need to find Viddle." "Did you say sunset?" Memorizing began, only for the Captain General to interrupt him. "Ignore the prophecy. We have more pressing matters at hoof," the mayor said, before turning to her royal guards. "Gather the Owie Odalis's belongings we confiscated. I will be performing a high-powerful tracker to defy—" "Get down!" Rex dropped to the ground as something smashed into the door. "Generosity," the Nightmare said, as it slid up to his side with a hoof raised to smash his face in. "You are neglecting me." Rex raised his arms in time to deflect the worst of the blow, sliding backwards, only for him to crash into something familiarly soft and fluffy. Cozy. Soft and cozy. Grunting in pain, both Rex and Windbreaker struggled to get to their feet, as the Nightmare began to stalk towards them, wings forming on its sides. "If only you had kept that firearm, you might have lasted a bit longer. Your kind has yet to scratch the true depth of what do they call them again? Ah, yes, Manchurian dragons can do. Not enough to banish me, of course, but with enough force you could make me find another host." It then turned its head towards the Captain General. "But of course, you would need to destroy my host first, and I doubt regicide is something you can justify." The Captain General must have said something that amused the Nightmare, because it threw its head back and laughed. "Ah, your loyalty is really touching," it said, as a wave of air smashed Knight, Page, and Vixley into the wall. "Once I kill these children, I must ask why Balance did not choose you captains. Such a better fit than these failures." "We are many things," Rex grunted, "but failures are not among them." He smirked, moments before there was a sudden shout, and then something very large and heavy came hurtling towards them. Part 2. Vixley. "Hey, Nightmare!" Vixley shouted as she stood in front of a toppled filing cabinet, with Senor Hardhead in her hands. "Heads up!" she shouted as she smashed the cabinet with her hammer and sent it crashing into the Nightmare's side. "You!" the Nightmare roared as it barely managed to raise a shield in time. I should have just killed you from the start. You'll find a tar like me isn't so easy to kill, Vixley taunted it, spinning her hammers. Come and get some. A black spear of energy was the Nightmare's answer, which Vixley narrowly dodged. Whoa! There was a flash, and the Nightmare gawked. What? Another flash, and it hissed, as one of its false wings began, impossibly, to bleed. Part 3. Windbreaker. From where he was still laying, Windbreaker watched as tendrils of shadow shot out of their enemy's wing and began to reattach its. As tendrils of shadow shot out, and their enemy's wing began to reattach itself. Urgh, he heard Nightblade mutter. I knew I should have pressed the attack. You should have indeed, Loyalty, the creature snapped. You won't get a second chance. It lashed out with another spear, impaling Nightblade's own wing and evoking a cry of pain from him. I wonder how long it will take you to bleed out, it wondered, a malicious smirk spreading out on its face. Let's find out, shall we? Oh, no you don't! Windbreaker roared, bringing up his crossbow and firing a shot at the creature possessing their king. Unfortunately, a wall of shadow rose to deflect the bolt. Foolish griffin, you'll never defeat me with that toy. Then how about this one? Vixley, These people are repeating themselves. Part 4. Vixley. Vixley frowned as she watched Nightblade and Windbreaker making the attacks that she had started. Then, as the Nightmare taunted Windbreaker about his crossbow, she decided to get its attention. Then how about this one? Pulling something out of her side pouch, she reared back and hurled it at the Nightmare, beating it in the back of the head and causing it to frown as it picked the object up to examine it. A rubber lizard? It wondered aloud. Then a desk hit it in the back of the head, exploding on contact. The creature snarled as it was knocked forward, then lashed out behind itself to attack the Minotaur. It met a massive shield instead. Part 5. Page Turner. My turn, Paige whispered, as she faced the monster that had captured them, the fiend responsible for so many deaths, including her great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, and so many other ponies and changelings. You wish to face me in a battle of shields? The Nightmare laughed. Don't be foolish, child. I am so far beyond anything you could... It was cut off by a circular disc, slamming it in the face. You may use shields, Paige growled, but I was born for them. Then let's see how skilled you really are, kindness, the Nightmare hissed, as it and Paige began to circle one another. Show me you can live up to the name Armor. Paige answered by launching a multitude of energy shields at their enemy. Ha! The Nightmare gloated. Really? Is that the best you can do? That was pathetic. Even that fool Shining... It was cut off as an even bigger shield smacked it in the face. Shining Armor was a great stallion, Paige snapped, and I will not have you disparaging him like that. Shining Armor was a weak-minded slave who allowed Chrysalis to take advantage of him, the Nightmare shouted back as it blocked her next energy volley. He was so eager to hop into bed with her, never once thinking that something was wrong about his dear precious Cadence being so eager to sleep with him before the wedding. And that's how it all began, you know. If he hadn't slept with her, Lamilia Armor I wouldn't have been born, and you wouldn't be here today. How does that feel, knowing how your line came about? Shining Armor wasn't perfect, but he was family, Paige snarled, deflecting the Nightmare's next attack. And as disgusted as I am with what Chrysalis did to him, that's nothing compared to how utterly I despise you for what you did to every pony. Feel this! A flock of shadowy bats shot out from the Nightmare's false wings and swarmed the domed shield Paige had instantly erected, Then, as they slammed against it repeatedly, they exploded. With a cry of pain as her shield shattered, Paige fell to the ground, unmoving. Part 6. Windbreaker. "Paige!" Windbreaker shouted. Without thinking, he fired his crossbow straight at the Nightmare, while Nightblade rushed out to pull the mare he loved to safety. "Cover me!" the other stallion yelled, and Windbreaker nodded, leaping into the air with some slight difficulty before he began circling the room from above. Something flew past his head, and he let out an awk of surprise when he realized it had come from behind him. Then he realized the extra weight on his back, and things suddenly became clear. "My apologies," Rex sounded somewhat breathless, "but I needed a better vantage point from which to strike." "No problem," Windbreaker managed as he continued circling. "You could have warned me you were going to hop on, though." "I'll try to do so in the future," Rex replied dryly, before throwing another of his potion bottles, then took hold of Windbreaker as the griffin jinked to the left, avoiding a bolt from the Nightmare. They continued in this manner for some minutes, Rex throwing his bottles and Windbreaker adding his own shots periodically, before one of his companions' smoke bombs hit the Nightmare. "We need to land," Rex called from behind him, and Windbreaker, his talons full of crossbow, nodded. Grunting as Rex squeezed his side tighter, he headed for the ground and found himself next to Vix Lee, who was pressing the rag that blocked out Rex's smoke to her mouth. Windbreaker found himself coughing for air under the sheer thickness of it, and he fumbled to get the rag pressed against his beak. "Damnation, only one of the fire potions that Jeb gave me is left." The diamond dog that was on his back grumbled loudly. "Fire, fire, fire," Vixley muttered to herself, before breaking out into a massive grin. "Rex, I have a crazy idea." "Sometimes crazy works," Rex replied. "Tell me." Vixley did, and alarmingly, Rex's tail began to wag fiercely, while Windbreaker acted far more reasonable, and just gulped at Vixley's insane plan. Part 7. The Nightmare. It hissed and growled as it tried to displace the damnable smoke from the room, but Generosity's tricks were confoundingly hard to dispel. These elements were beginning to prove themselves a true nuisance, and it was beginning to regret not killing them and placing them into that false dream realm to mock the Lady of Dreams, for when it reneged on their plan to merge their two powers into one. Still, magic was under its control, and it could not lose. Suddenly, there were twin bursts of flames, and Laughter was charging down at it while screaming a Minotaur war cry, as both of Laughter's hammers were on fire. It knew that Laughter carried a fake hammer, and thus one was a decoy to distract it. The Nightmare eyed the hammers as the Minotaur raced towards it and threw one hammer. The Nightmare instantly deflected it with a shield, and sent it into the dragon-glass steel windows, where the hammer exploded into bits of fluff with thin spider cracks on the near-unbreakable window. The Nightmare froze at this, wondering how strong the Minotaur was, when it realized it had taken its attention away from Laughter, who was now leaping into position to send its real hammer into an uppercut blow, using both of its arms to power the swing. The Nightmare was only able to create a shield at the last second, but it was too late, as the hammer connected to the chin of its host, causing the Nightmare to fly backwards and crash into the wall as it was forced to quickly heal the broken skull of its host, gasping for air and fighting back actual pain. Part 8. Nightblade. Night's eyes went wide as Vixley managed to send the Nightmare back into the wall, and seemingly defeat the power, with the Minotaur on the ground and holding her right arm, the broken remains of Signor Hardhead around her. "Vixley!" Paige shouted as she flew down beside her, with Windbreaker landing beside her and Rex hopping off the griffin's back. "Are you okay?" Yeah, totally, she said in a weak voice, still on the ground and holding her bloody arm. Just one question, guys. How bad is it to see the bone sticking out? She chuckled as she gripped her right arm tighter to stem the blood, with the white shine of her arm's bone sticking out. Just curious, as I can't feel anything, and I want to know how badly I should be freaking out right now. 'Cause I think it should be a lot, to be honest. Rest assured, Vixley, that once we are safe and you are treated, I will inform you then how badly you should be panicking, Rex said, as he looked over the massive injury, clearly at a loss in how to begin. Thanks, Rexy, for always being a comforty, Vixley began, before a roar forced them all backwards. Cover your ears. Enough! The nightmare bellowed as it forced them to the ground with its dark tendrils, holding their bodies down but leaving their heads up to watch it. I am ancient. I have seen empires fall, civilizations pass, and ages come and go. I have seen the rise and fall of countless races, and I survived them all. I will not be mocked in this manner anymore. You will all die now, and your precious Viddle will watch all of you die horrible, agonizing deaths, unable to save her friends, it screamed at them, raising 5 swords made out of darkness, stalking towards them. Time for your endless suffering to begin! It froze in place, eyes going wide as it snapped its head in such a manner that would have killed a mortal creature. No, the nightmare whispered to itself, before screaming out in even greater anger, the room shaking in its outburst. No, 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 no! The nightmare whipped its head back, foaming at the mouth with a snarl that held far too many teeth. This is it! You will all die now! It screamed as it lifted the 5 swords over each of their necks. Hey you! A voice called out from behind the nightmare, with a dark bluish-purple hand reaching to pull the nightmare around. Get away from my friends, Viddle said, before punching the nightmare in the face with her glowing violet knucklebuster, a color that matched the fully restored crown that was the element of magic now resting on her head. You know, I honestly, somehow, despite having brought up the basic idea when it was just Viddle I was thinking of, neglected to realize that it should have killed them instead of putting them in that dream. It really had nothing much to gain from not killing them. And the smart thing there would be to remove them permanently from the equation. And the most permanent thing I can think of you can do to a person is not to put them in stasis in a dreamscape and hope they don't break free. It's to remove their soul from this plane of existence. There are very few forces, in either our reality or theirs, that can undo such a removal. Discord is one of them, at least in the case of Sombra, I think. But Discord, A, doesn't appear to be here, and B, would probably be a villain at this point in the story. So he's not really likely to interfere here. So yeah, I somehow missed it until the nightmare started bringing up that it probably should have killed these people sooner. It's correct, it should have. Very typical problem a lot of villains run into. It's just not killing their enemies when they had the opportunity. For different reasons than a lot of heroes have the same exact problem. You can't leave loose ends lying around like that. It'll come back to bite you. Yes. Alrighty then. I think that's all I have for this episode. See you later. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.